here. Trustee Ron Wilson.
Here.
Trustee Neil Gaynor.
Here.
Trustee Paul Martin.
Here.
Trustee Walt Lashevsky.
Here.
Trustee Brad Hauk.
Here.
Trustee Kent Maggart.
Here.
Trustee Keith Lincoln.
Here.
Trustee David Smith.
Here.
Trustee Hugh Connett.
Here.
Very good. We have a quorum. We have an agenda. We will begin with our opening invocation and pledges of allegiance. Heavenly Father, we come to you today as an assembled body. We humbly request that you bless our meeting, our community, and our nation. Help us to work diligently, always for the common good and in the best interest of those who we have been elected to represent. Guide us to be insightful and prudent in our intentions, visions, plans, deliberations, decisions, and their fulfillment. Work through us to provide a spirit of welcome to all in attendance, to engage in respectful and thoughtful dialogue and discussion with understanding, wisdom, and humility. Amen. If you wish, prior to reciting the pledges of allegiance, please take an additional moment of silent prayer in the manner of your preference. Thank you. Pledge to the flag of the United States of America. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pledge to the Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Shelley, do we have any comments from the public this evening? We do not. Okay. Brings us to agenda item 4. Receive an update on Region H. Arthur Bradahall.
Well, good evening, President, trustees, senior staff of Woodlands Water, and senior staff of SJRA. Just to take us a step back, in February, the Region H planning group approved the initial plan for 2026 to 2031. All the region's plans have been submitted to the Texas Water Development Board, and you can go on the Texas Water Development Board website, and you can see all the region's plans and all the details are there. Initially, we were going to have public meetings in April, but all the regions coordinated, and May has been selected as the month for the public meetings. On the Google Drive for Region H, Shelley put out a copy of the press release, and all the details on the specific meetings are in that press release. For example, on the 8th of May, the first public meeting will be at the Houston Galveston Area Council building, and all the details are in that press release. On the 13th of May, there's a meeting at the SJRA building, headquarters building up at the Conroe Dam. And the last public meeting is on the 15th of May, and that's in the city of Madisonville. The next quarterly meeting of Region H is scheduled for the 7th of February, the 7th of May. Then there is the public comment period, and that is opened, and that will close on the 18th of July. All the details of how to make a written public comment are in the press, is in that press release. A copy of all regional plans will be on at the clerk's office in each respective county and at the depository library in each county. So the Montgomery Library System will have a copy of Region H's plan, and also be a copy of the Montgomery County Clerk's Office. And then I'll be back in May to give you an update on our May quarterly meeting. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Always good to be here.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure to have you. I don't see Imelda Diaz. Is she here? You have her? Okay, good. Thank you. Yep.
planning group. There was no meeting of the planning group, so yes, does not have an update. However, I want to bring to the attention of the trustees that there will be a meeting of the technical committee of the flood planning group on Friday, the 11th April, 2 to 4 p.m. at Freeze and Nichols office. Go to the website for details if you want to view the meeting via remote system. San Jacinto floodplanning.org is the website, and the meeting is on the first page. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Okay, that brings us to the consent agenda, pages 1 through 17 in our meeting packets.
Comment on pages 10 and 12. There was a revision that was paired. I don't know if everyone had an opportunity to pick one up. Pass around. On the cash balances, we just brought forward incorrectly, and it changed all the numbers, unfortunately. So those are the corrections. Approve or move that we approve based on that change.
We have a motion. Do we have a second for, yes, Brad?
Correction on page 1. I was absent last month. Doesn't reflect that in the meeting minutes. Emily was here for me.
Good. Any other need for amendments? Yes, sir?
Yeah, item 10. Maybe it's the wording. And GM Patterson reported that he attended the GRP review committee meeting on March 12th. I don't think the GRP meeting wasn't on March 12th. It was February 24th. He reported on the 12th. So I don't know whether the language is meaning.
It might be that at top of the document, I put the 12, because that was the day of the trustee meeting.
Yeah.
But it was reporting on the previous meeting that was on the 20th.
Right, yeah, so.
Very good. Thank you, Brad. Anyone else? We have a motion. Anybody second? We approve it. Second by Brad. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes. Brings us to agenda item number 9. Chris Meeks received the regular monthly SJRA Woodlands Division report, including updates on operations, projects, and public outreach. Mr. Meeks, good evening.
Everyone. 2 quick updates from your monthly operations report. First is going to be on page 19. To draw something to your attention. You're going to see the water loss as far as the gallons for flushing increased in March, as you see here, for 5 million, and as well as in April. In the final stages of 3 well rehabs, and so you have to flush the wells, disinfecting, flush them, go on with that back and forth. But we did take some samples in March. They did fail, so we had to continue disinfecting and flushing. So April's going to have high water loss as well for those well flushings. So if you see those numbers, they are high, but it is also standard procedure to flush after you disinfect. Next item is on page 26. Ask Connie to come up and help me. Well, let's let her take.
Good evening, Connie.
Good evening, Lord. Thanks for having us here this evening. Just want to give a real quick update. So on page 26 at the very top, Water Reclamation Facility number 1 land acquisition as a project. I think y'all are well aware that is generally on hold. We haven't really been moving forward with any of the land acquisition, but we did want to formally notify you all. If you read the update here, voluntary land acquisition. So we've had 2 tracts that have approached us that want to sell. So one of them is a 1.58 acre tract, which is off of Golden Road, just to the east of the plant. It's got a home on it and some really nice buildings and facilities. He is planning to sell one way or the other, and it would be beneficial for us to have that to use the buildings. The second one is tract 2, if you went back to the property acquisition maps, and it is a 1.54 acre tract to the north. It's actually landlocked just to the north of our property. And once again, it would be beneficial for us to have just in general for use for anything that we do. It also helps with the buffer that we need to continue to have between us and the development. So we are proceeding with those voluntary land acquisitions, and we're just making sure that y'all are notified.
How much are they?
The one off of Golden Road is somewhere around $655,000, I believe. And then the one off of the landlocked one's like 43,000. So it's depreciated because it's landlocked.
It's appreciated because of what?
It's landlocked. There's no access to it. Yeah. So we actually have better access than they do. So, thank y'all.
Thank you for that update.
That was all we have.
Oh, I have a question. So I got an email about Spring Creek detention. I mean, the Spring Creek project.
Yes, sir.
I know we haven't met in about a year and a half.
Okay.
So there's town hall meetings.
Yes, sir.
So explain to me what's happening with that project.
That is a very good question, Mr. Smith, and it's something that our our flood management group is doing. So it's something with public outreach that is standard, and I will have to get back with you on that. I don't know.
I'm surprised that's just, we haven't had it in a year and a half.
Yeah, well, I brought it up last month to you and the rest of the trustees and MUDs. But they have finished the evaluation, the engineers have. And the next, they're required to do several public meetings. They did one in Waller, they did one at the township. And so this is the next round of that. So the next one is April 21st in Waller area, and then on April 28th at the township. So if you recall, the one at the township, they had a lot of poster boards and a lot of information about it. It'll be similar to that, but the drainage analysis is almost done. We're done at this point.
So this is completing the obligation to the people we got the grant from.
Correct.
Anything to do with Senator Perry's effort to have a water state agency? You know,
Yes.
like agriculture? No. I was curious. They see that.
I can tell you that is not for sure. I can definitely tell you that's not
No,
related to this.
no,
No, sir.
his $1 billion kitty.
No, sir.
Very good. Anything else for Mr. Meeks? Go ahead, Brad.
No, you had your hand up first.
Page 20, not operating data, but a design data question. Particularly as we have other discussions. The ratio between permitted flow and 2-hour peak flow for the 3 wastewater treatment plants seem to be different. And when we look at treatment plant 1, it's like a factor of 2.3. Could you provide as an update or an email or some communication, what drives the basis for those and why they're so different? I mean, plant 1 is 2.3, plant 2 is 2.6, and plant 3 is 4.
We can gather that information and get it over to Eric so he can have that information to share with y'all.
Right, thanks.
Yeah, I have a question on page 26. Water well number 3 is being brought forward in priority as there's been an issue there.
Yeah.
That happens to be in Mud 6, actually just down the road. Could you provide information so I could pass it on to the residents of Lakeside Cove as to the timetable when there's going to be
Oh, sure.
any activity at the well?
Yeah, so on a high level, it's under design right now.
Yeah.
So it failed within the last 30 days. So the design typically takes 6 to 9 months. It's done in-house.
Oh, we're looking at next year
You're
sometime.
looking at past September before we get construction. Then you're looking at 3 months for bids, could be a December, possibly January board award. So you're, at some point, yes, you're gonna go to construction, but probably early fiscal year or calendar year next year.
Has been a couple water line breaks recently, right?
Hey, Bagger?
There was, the all mud meeting wasn't conducive to asking questions, as you know, people couldn't hear anybody, hear people. And so as long as Connie's here, and unfortunately Ed's not here, but I got a question. You all probably have seen this graph that says you got existing flow 3.6, and then 10 years from now, it's still 3. And then you got this red line up here that is.
I am familiar with it, but let me make sure I'm looking at the same thing, the 7 MGD.
Yeah, tell
Yes,
me
sir.
why the red is on top of why isn't the red down here and subtracted from 1.7? In other words, you still got the same number of SFBUs purchased, but the red line should be on top of the dark blue line, and then the purchase should be reduced by 0.6 and 0.9.
Right, so this is additional developments is in pink.
No, but that's right. So why aren't your red lines reduced by that amount and put down here? In other words,
Because we've already sold this capacity here to the pink and the hatch.
no, you sold it in here.
Yes, sir.
No, I mean,
We've sold this purchase through the 1.7, which gets us up to, this 5.32.
but you bought it way back here. And then you used it to take care of that 0.7. So this should go to 1.1 and this should stay the same. This is,
I think, so Mr. Maggard, let us take this offline. You and I can talk about this, okay?
no, well, I'm going to put this on the agenda next time because it's absolutely critical.
Okay.
These numbers are critical to the design volumes, and they're not right. My opinion, the way they got it graphed is not right. They have not taken it into account. They purchased 1.7, which I've got some facts about that, but what you purchased, you should have taken into account the 6 pence and our 0.7 and 0.9, and the 5.2 should be the same number all the way across.
We can discuss that again if you'd like
That's
next
great.
time.
Sir.
Okay, yes, okay.
Can I,
We'll get everything.
Let me, and then I got another thing. Chris, I asked a question about when that peak flow of this peak flow that they used in their presentation of 28 million, and nobody could tell me what date that was. So what I'd like to do, and this will be for the upcoming agenda, I want to see from the tax day, Memorial Day, Harvey, up forward each year, the peak flow and the date. In other words, can you give me a graph? It's real simple, one page, a graph of peak flow and the date and the amount of rain. And do you use the rain volume at your plant?
Excuse me, point of order, Mr. Chairman. Eric, did you not tell everyone to put their questions through you to pass at the month?
That's what I was going to remind everybody. I would like for everyone to pass along any comments that you have related to the all muds to me, and I'll get them to Corello so they can actually address them at the next all muds on the 8th. I think that would be beneficial because I know there's a lot of questions, but we need to get those questions to consultants so they can be prepared to answer them. So if you could get those to me, I'll be happy to pass them on. I have received questions from one director so far.
But I
can I
want to put
add
that,
to that? I mean, so
I want to put the peak flow issue on the agenda next time
Okay.
for this
You
meeting.
got two things here.
Peak
That's
flow,
your request.
but I guess what I'm concerned about is because I very much share Kent's concern about some information. The main,
Off agenda here. We're not supposed to be, we didn't have an agenda item for the all mud meeting, which is perhaps unfortunate, but it just is. And is that not correct? I mean, we shouldn't be discussing things that are not on the agenda. It's not in compliance, or is it okay to go?
There's the language there, and I'm like, yeah, this is really vision report. We have the 2-year budget plan.
And, but I'll just remind it, if anyone get your questions to me, I'll be happy to pass them along.
will we have answers before the May 8th meeting?
I'll have to give them to the consultant. I can't answer that.
hey, let's not give them to a consultant. Let's give them, the consultants work for these folks here. In other words, please don't give them to the consultant, give them to the river authority.
Absolutely.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for agenda item number 9? Hearing none, agenda item number 10, presentation of the Woodlands Division 10-year project plan. Mr. Meeks again, I believe.
Yeah, short small. But, so it is going to be brought up on the screen. This is going to be a high level overview. As y'all know, we presented to the trustees as well as the MUDs. We have presented this to Woodlands Water first, then the audit committee. There's no action item for the project plan. It's just to be presented. There's never a formal action taken on the project plan itself. But we do want your input and guidance. So we'll go ahead and flip to the first page. So y'all seen this before. We utilize our asset management plan, but we also rely on the studies that are being done to kind of form the projects that need to go forwards. Not every project we have in there needs a study to be done by a consultant, but some of the bigger ones do come from some of the studies that you see right here related to wells, evaluations, condition assets and stuff like that. This is the biggest thing throughout the entire document here is, as y'all are well aware, there's 3 studies going on. Well, there's 2 studies and a route study, if you will, being done for the conveyance. That means since those big studies are being done, there's no major changes to the project plan itself. We did extend it a year because it's a 10-year plan. So you drop off a year, you add a year, you push some projects, a little bit more inflation, the addition of a couple projects in the R&R funded section. So the cost has gone up, I think, 25 million just for everything pushed out to 2035 or so. But no major changes. We did not wipe all the bonds off. We didn't add more on there. Basically, if you look at last year's versus this year's, the projects are pretty much all the same. So I'm not going to hit on every single one of these projects. If you see something up there you'd like more information about, I can run through it with y'all. But what we tried to do on here is put the total project budget. As you know, these projects run through different fiscal years. The R&R is not tied by a fiscal year. And so you'll see the total project budget up there. That number comes from the larger document. It has all the data in it. Then we have an expected to spend in FY26. So when you're looking at this document and you go to the summary page, I can be able to flip to right off the bat, then you're going to see these numbers here. This is basically cash flow. That's how much we expect to spend on that project in FY26. I just bring that up because it confuses me sometimes. And same thing on the wastewater side. Some of them more of the same projects you've seen over time. I will tell you, we are looking at the lift station number 1 bypass and decommissioning at this time. We're looking to move that from R&R funding to remaining bond funds. If we do that, then of course you'll be notified and project plan will change at some point anyways. And so that'll be included in the change. One other one? Yes.
So we had some discussion of the night confusion on lift station number 1 versus lift station number 1. Can you clarify?
So, yeah, and I've got something in my head to fix that. So every wastewater plant has an on-site lift station. So typically they're just called wastewater plant 1's lift station. Wastewater plant 1 has lift station 1 and lift station 2 inside the perimeter.
So all the water dumps in to that one lift station from collects and.
For the 2 lift stations at wastewater plant 1.
Right. So all the input is going to go through those 2 lift stations.
Correct. So you have an on-site lift station number 1 at wastewater plant 1, then you have an off-site lift station number 1. And this one's at the intersection of Grogan's Mill and Woodlands Parkway.
What's the purpose difference between those 2?
They're identical, it's just location.
But the one offsite, does that lift the water to the 2 that are in the plant?
Well, this one, right now, this one lifts it to following the flow. Yeah, it goes lift station 1, pumps it to lift station 1 or 2.
1 or 2 inside the facility?
Inside the facility, correct. Most of the other ones.
Why that arrangement? I'm just curious. That's
Gravity.
so the gravity line comes to lift, yeah, let's call it lift offsite.
So the offsite lift station lifts it up because it got to a low elevation. So it lifts it up, pushes it out at a higher elevation, drops into the gravity system, which then gravities into lift station or wastewater plant number 1. Wastewater plant 1 is based off of gravity, not off of pumps. So then the lift stations on site lift it back up so it can gravity through the entire facility.
If you could, you'd want to gravity everything throughout the system. This system is so humongous that if you try to gravity from one end to the next, be 50 feet deep, and city user wouldn't allow your gravity lines to be that deep. So about the time that roughly that it gets to 20, 25 feet max, you'll empty it into a lift station, and then that'll pump it up and drop it, either push it through a force main to the next downstream bigger pipe, or drop it straight into a gravity line, and it'll gravity on as far as it can go until it gets to the next, pinch point where it runs out of gravity, or runs out of depth.
So the lift station offsite has the capacity to handle the whole site. Whereas
No,
lift station,
No.
Lift stations are throughout the Woodlands.
I understand
They're
that.
all different sizes.
Does all the stuff that comes to that lift station come from the ones upstream, does that collect all the water and then pump it into the
So
plant?
lift station number one offsite,
Also,
that's everything that's basically in its small region, if
and that's small
in its
region.
service area.
Because there's a whole bunch of lift stations in wastewater treatment.
Yeah,
Area.
plant one has about 25 lift stations. Plant two to the elevation has 4 as of now. Plant three has 1.
All the little dots.
Yeah, the graph has them all.
There you go. Thank you.
They're in there.
Yeah, they're by, yeah.
So let me ask you, when you have a peak flow event, will that lift station handle has it always handled the peak flow event?
No.
So then if it doesn't, how do you bypass it?
So we don't bypass it, because if you bypass it, the only way you bypass the lift station at the plant is to let it go on the ground.
Well, you dump it in the creek, right? Well, I mean,
No.
you don't, it's my
You bypass
understanding,
it
you
to
don't
the
have a
ground.
bypass that ultimately dumps it into the creek.
No. We
Okay.
have nothing
So
that connects.
I'm trying to,
Yeah, no.
so you got a lift station, and then what happens if the lift station can't handle the peak flow for a few hours? What do you do?
So typically what we do, because you have no other choice, once the pumps are running at max and the lift station is going to overflow, we back it up through the system,
You back up the system.
throughout the entire system, which means going through every lift station in the system, every pump, and basically just letting it all get as full as possible.
Oh,
So like during Harvey, a lot of people around the Flint Ridge area, I believe it was, those pipes were all full because everything was underwater, lift station offline. So when you flush, that's when you get the gurgle, because it has nowhere to go. So it's saying, what do I do?
You measure that height with your SCADA system, or is that just manually going in and spot checking stuff?
The lift stations are off a SCADA system, the main ones.
Well, you can see which ones are, just use the word overwhelmed.
Not all of them, but most of them we can. I think there's just about 15 to 20 that are on SCADA so we can see.
You can tell which ones are, to me, if the lift station gets overwhelmed, it's because rainwater is flooding into the top of the.
Yeah, during a rain event, I&I is the big cause of it. Not so much the water coming in to the lift station, like from rain and flood and stuff, but it's actually just the I&I throughout the system. So manholes and creaky pipes and stuff.
You can track which one is worse than the other. We'll rank them.
You can.
You can.
As far as, we don't have flow meters on all of them, so you have to look at pump run times, you have to look at levels and stuff like that. It's a little bit complicated.
so how do you determine the peak flow if you basically let it back up into your system?
So the peak flow you see is basically whatever we can bring in. The peak flow is not, the influent does not have a flow measurement device on it. It's only on the external side. So the effluent has the flow meter, the influent does not.
So how do you come up with a number like 22.4 or something? If you're only measuring the effluent?
The peak flow counts as it's leaving the facility, where we do have the partial plume as well as the flow meter there. So we're coming in, because we know we back it up in TCQ as a requirement. TCQ only requires what's leaving your facility,
Then you assume everything comes in leaks.
because nothing hits the ground. Now, you do take out reuse, right? Because that's pulled out before the actual flow measurement device. But yeah, if it comes into the plant, it goes to that flow meter. Whatever we back up in the system stays, meaning peak flows would be high.
No, so the reason I'm trying to get there is that's the overriding critical thing that's, people are spending $100 million to rectify. And the question is whether you rectify the peak flow at the back end or the front end.
Oh,
So-
by far, the cheaper option is always
No,
fix
but
it in
the point is,
system.
I'm still trying to figure out, so the effluent, how do you get 30 million a gallon a day equivalent? I mean, through the plant. Basically, you're just cutting down the residence time in all your units, right?
It just flows through the plant, overflows the weirs, goes through every basin.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So then, do you ever is your sampling for BODs and nitrogen and everything, is it grab samples or continuous samplers?
Both. Depends what it is. pH, chlorine and stuff, those are grabs, BOD, stuff like that's through the composite sampler 24 hours.
So what kind of quality at a peak flow event are you discharging? Do you ever?
It's rainwater. I mean, if average flows
Well, if it's going through the plant, it's gotta be, there's gotta be some,
Oh, yeah,
you
there's
still
some
got,
residual.
you still got your facilities running during this event, right?
No, entirely, but I mean, you're taking a flow that's usually 3 and you're putting it at 30 or 20.
No, I understand that, but
Diluted.
so you're concluding that it's so diluted that, it's not a problem.
No, we
environmentally.
sample, we still test. We
No,
still.
but I mean, I was curious on what the BOD, say at a peak flow event is, or a nitrogen or ammonia.
I've looked at it when it was that time. I just don't keep it in the brain. I only got so much I can remember.
You got your operator back here.
Jason, do you recall?
Yeah, I mean, we stay within purview. During peak flow events, there's steps that we can take prior to a storm if we know it's coming to try to maintain a sludge inventory in the plant, which helps us maintain the treatment process. So if we can set up for it, eventually you're passing through rainwater. At some
No, I
point,
understand.
it just gets to the point where it's passing through rainwater, but we stay in compliance. We're able to take steps to stay in
No,
compliance.
but I mean, do you have data, BOD data?
But we have all of our sample
No, I'm
data.
talking about during a peak flow event.
If you're asking if we have real-time data, no. Because, BODs, those are 5-day
No, but,
incubations.
no, I know you got it, but
Yeah.
you go back and, I know it's 5 days, but you go back and you sample at this particular time of day. 5 days later, you get the results. Can you go back and that day or?
Not for that particular time. Because they're all composite sampling representative of the previous 24 hours.
Okay, so it's a continuous sampler.
Yes.
So you don't have a grab sample when it's blowing.
Not unless there's something that prompts us to do that.
Whereas pH or chlorine or something that you can't hold, has no hold time, something like that, we definitely do.
What I'm getting to is that I heard the word variance, and we're designing this plant for a peak flow event that I want to see the data, but it may be a 500-year flood.
I see what you're saying, but
And
that's not part of this.
no, I understand.
So I think.
I understand it. I'm just trying to, when I got you here,
I know.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Aren't we set up with 2 items next month to discuss these issues? And the agenda presumably would reflect that the next meeting. Am I correct or not?
That's the way I see it. What do you say, Counselor?
Talking about, visiting about the presentation from last month.
Well, I mean, are we still talking about the
I mean,
presentation?
what we're supposed to be talking about is what is from the presentation.
So I think we should move
we're
along.
talking about wastewater running through the plant. Looks like it's on the, anyway.
So next slide, existing bond projects. These are projects that are utilizing the existing bond that we have on hand, which is the one from 2017 that can only be utilized on wastewater related projects. And so we had a number of projects slated for this bond, but through stuff being put on hold and projects changing and adjusting, we still had some funds left. And so what we're looking at is the filters at wastewater plant 2. They're in this year's, like the current FY25 project plan. They're also continuing forward in FY26's project plan. That construction will probably start here in a month or 2. It was approved at our board meeting last month. The other project is the South Shore Gravity Main. That is a very large project. As you can see, the map on the bottom left, all those colored lines, that is all going to be rehabbed. So from the east side and the west side, Lake Woodlands, down through the golf course over to basically lift station 5 and a little bit west of that. So we will be in people's backyards in that area because the manholes are in the backyard, sewer lines are in the backyard. And then, of course, if you play golf, don't play in that area for about a year. Play the other course.
And when you say bond money, when was those bonds, under what event did those bonds get sold? Was that like, the 6th accounting, the 5th accounting?
Major maintenance. So we had presented some projects to the MUDs. and basically asked if they want a cash fund or bond fund. After discussion, it was decided to go with a bond fund. And so we bond funded it. I think it was about a $43 million bond in 2017.
2017. And how are the months paying this back?
That is actually through the rates. And so what we
Oh,
decided
through the
that, right. So what we've done at that time is the R&R fund used to be $7.5 million. So there was no rate impact. We reduced the R&R fund since these projects were in the R&R fund. We reduced it from 7.5 to 5 million. And then over the last few years, 4 or 5 years, it went back up to about 6 million. So no impact on rates at the time because we used cash on hand to pay debt service.
There's a question. This isn't part of the STAR program that you had going.
Yes,
It is?
correct.
Okay.
So
So
start.
just getting around to this set of mains.
So this project actually was going to start earlier, but it was put on hold because of the wastewater strategic plan. Just like the filters above it, that was put on hold.
Got it.
And so a lot of these projects that were put on hold are starting to come back up because you have to take it, you have to redesign, confirm everything's right, then put it on the street, so. All right, next item. This is a grant project. So this is lift station 4 off of Flint Ridge. And so what we're looking to do there is, as you can see, this is during Hurricane Harvey. You can only enter it by going on a boat. However, it did stay in service the entire time. Everything was raised up through either the building itself, the belly tanks. There's a little bit of water in the bottom of the panels, but we were able to receive a grant with the help of the lobbyist group. And so the grant is for $1.8 million. You do have to have a personal match. And so the personal match that's funded via R&R is just over $600,000. Right now, we are currently working with the Army Corps of Engineers to get all the agreements signed. Once those are all signed, then the project can basically kick off. So expectation, maybe we can get some design or RFQs in the next 6 months, hopefully. Takes a little bit of time.
Is that in the Spring Creek floodplain? Is that what that is?
I'm not familiar with the floodplains, but
Um,
if I'm thinking about it, it is pretty close to
It's on
the.
Flint Ridge?
Yeah, it's pretty
Okay.
close
Yeah,
to
it
it.
is.
It's that big ditch behind it is the one that flooded it. And there. All right, so then this is the biggest part of the project plan. So this is what I've just lumped together as the unfunded projects. So the wastewater owner's advisor, the wastewater conveyance optimization, water reclamation facility number 1, and the water line replacements on the right in the middle. Those all have current studies going on. We did not want to wipe them out. We didn't want to change them. You've seen them before, so we just left them all the same, pushed them out a little bit. Those waiting for path forward before we can decide how we're going to go forward. Now the top right, gravity main renewals. Those are unfunded because at this point, we have not brought anything to say, okay, this is when we have to do them, how we have to do them, besides being in a project plan. That's about 5 or 6 different gravity mains that we need to rehab based on the STAR program that was done in 2017. Now, recognizing the STAR program was 8 years ago, it may have been 18, 7, 8 years ago. What we're doing this year and what we're doing next year is we're reconfirming the priority of those projects. And so we have staff out there, we have contractor out there with staff televising a few of the lines that are come up first. Next year, we're going to look to televise the rest of them. From that, we can determine, do they still need to be done now, or do we need to postpone them a little bit? And so hopefully we'll have more information at the end of this year, and then the next project plan, we can start reprioritizing. Bottom right, water system assets. There's one water well. That's a new water well at some point in time to add in. We are decommissioning wells as they start having major maintenance that cannot be rehabbed. At some point, you can lose a few wells, right, and not have to replace them. But at some point, you do need to start planning to replace some of the wells that you have. So for example, we've decommissioned 2 wells in the past 10 years, one about 2 months ago. And currently we have 8 wells that are out of service. 5 of those we have funding to get done, one being the well 3 and well 17 that are currently under design. 3 plan to go design next year. We have another 3 that are out of service as well. So there's quite a bit of wells that are out of service. And so what this is looking to do is over time, replace some of those Evangeline smaller wells with a bigger well in a different pressure plane that can help and flow down to the other wells.
So why are they out of service?
Mechanical issues, loss of GPM, brass, production of sand, stuff like that. So. Yes, sir.
So with the pipeline water, 50/50 now, Have we looked to see what should we be, what amount of well water should we be maintaining?
Yeah. So one of the reports I showed on the beginning of this is we call it the Intero report. We asked them to say, look forward and see how many wells we need in the future and which wells to rehab, when to rehab them. But you have to couple that as well with surface water is not guaranteed 24/7, 365. So we know that some wells can be reduced down. You don't have to replace every single one of them. But we also know that the Jasper wells can be lowered and they have better water quality. The Evangeline wells are the ones that we're looking at because you can't lower them. You can rehab them, but you're getting 600-700 gallons per minute. So the cost benefit of an Evangeline well for rehab isn't nearly as good as doing rehabbing or lowering a Jasper well. So over time, we're looking to reduce the Evangeline and increase the Jasper.
Similar building on what Dave said, I was just curious, if we made a decision to go to 60/40 rather than 50/50, do we still think we need this other well?
What I'm looking at is one TCQ requirements for redundancy, right? And I do know there are times when GRPs just shut down for 2 or 3 days. And if it shuts down in the summer or during the winter, whenever time, but during a high demand period, if you don't have enough water coming into the Woodlands because your wells have been cut down, then you have to boil water notices and other stuff. So there's a fine balance to me. I do think some wells eventually need to drop off and don't need to be replaced, but I don't want to drop them so far we're going to hurt ourselves.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So all these assumptions being made, what are the balances remaining in the 2017 bond fund?
Okay, so next slide, please. 2017 bond fund currently has, with none of these projects assumed, it's not on here. I saw it today. It's about 25 million on the 2017. So if you go and you look at this other project sheet, well, let me make it even simpler for you. So if we look at the projects that are in here and adding in that lift station number 1 that we talked about maybe moving from R&R, there's about $1 million left in R after all the other projects are taken care of, paid for. And then at that point, what we're going to look to do is if we don't have another project we can identify to use the funds up, we'll have to go to the Water Development Board, see if we can use those bond funds as expense and then use them on a non-capital big project.
Did I hear you say 1 million in the R&R fund?
I'm sorry, 1 million on the bond.
Okay.
I'm just talking about the bond. So then you have the R&R fund balance as of March 5th was just under 25 million. Now keep in mind with the R&R fund, there have been some projects on hold, with the biggest one being land acquisition, which is about $10 million. So then take all the other projects that we have in play, and that would reduce the funds.
Very good. Anything else? Thank you, sir.
I just want to throw one thing on that last side just real quick. When you're looking at this, the way we look at this and plan the 10-year project plan is that the R&R fund is funded by $6 million per year through the O&M fund to R. So with the cash that we have on hand and that $6 million for the next 10 years, as long as there's nothing else that occurs out of the ordinary, right now, this project plan is funded. But as far as the R&R fund, existing bonds and the grants. But at some point, if there's additional maintenance or more stuff needs to go into R&R, then that $6 million is going to have to increase. So it's going to have to increase over time. We've been at that number for about 3 to 4 years now. I don't see it sustaining the next 10 years, but if we have to make it work, you're going to have to delay some projects. So just FYI, at some point in the future.
And that funding is through rates.
That is through rates. It's built into the rates every year. So just throwing it out there now, because at some point we do need to chat about, does that 6 million stay the same, or is there some type of CPI tied to it where you get like 1 or 2% each year just to stay up with the flow, so I don't have to ask for $1 million a year for a few years. That's what I got. Anything else?
Again, if you put that last slide back up, I mean, to me, the key takeaway is the 614 million, right? That's the number we've got to deal with. I want to clarify that.
And that's the thing, is the unfunded part, if you take everything else off of that, I think you can fund everything you got that we know of for the next 10 years. The unfunded part is obviously the biggest part.
Thank you, sir.
Got questions? I'll be here next week.
Thank you, sir.
Brings us to agenda item 11. I've received the attorney's report. Brian Yates, please. Good evening.
Well, speaking of bonds, it was quite the ride this week. I don't know if any of you are in the muni bond market, but oh boy, 85 basis point change this week in the muni bond market, which is about 15%. We haven't seen that kind of swing in 1 week, I think, since around 08.
Up or down?
Up. That's the crazy thing. Stocks were going down, bond yields were going up. It was sell everything American until the announcement
I
today.
was thinking 10-year T closed up. Yeah, the last.
But not nearly as much as it was. Not nearly as much as it was. It was over 5 this morning in pre-market.
Oh, the 10-year T was over 5 at one point. This is like 4.34 now.
Yep. It was wild. So, yeah, we had deals that were having to get pushed back for bond sales and what have you. So hopefully things settle down a little bit. I don't think any of the districts here are looking to issue debt in the short term, but yeah, it was pretty hairy out there this week. So that's the bond market. As for the legislative session, it grinds on. There have been some movement on some of the bills I reported on last month. The House Bill 602 that related to the qualifications for directors. There was a committee hearing for that on April the 3rd. It has not moved out of committee yet. House Bill 2561 related to a meeting place for board meetings. There is actually a committee hearing tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I forwarded some information to Eric about that in case any directors were interested in attending and testifying at that hearing tomorrow. The language in there, we have concerns about it being overly broad because it requires meetings to be in the district unless, what was it? It was unsuitable. And that's a pretty broad term. I mean, is a park pavilion suitable? You know, I mean, I think we would argue that it's not because we record meetings, but currently that's not required by law. So it's overly broad. And so we do have concerns with it and are certainly looking for resident directors who are interested in testifying to go to that hearing.
This is mainly directed through MUDs that, you know, I know MUDs up here, they need them catered.
Yeah, but the way the statute's written, yeah, and again, this is just a committee hearing at this point. It hasn't gone further than that, but yeah, the hearing is tomorrow for land and resource management.
Can you repeat that bill number again?
That bill number is House Bill 2561. Let's see, next bill update, uniform election dates. That one was requiring director elections in November. That one was referred to Land and Resource Management on March 21st. No hearing yet. Let's see.
What was that bill? HP?
2561.
2561 that has the hearing tomorrow.
No, I mean the,
Oh,
House Bill.
yeah, elections was 3379.
That which committee would be?
That has been referred to the Land and Resource Management Committee on March 21st. Has not been scheduled for a hearing yet. The bill regarding the use of public funds to educate regarding an election measure that has been referred to State Affairs on March the 6th. It has not moved from there at this point. The Harris County Flood Control Bill that I reported on last time, the interesting bill that would turn over the control to the state and allow for the boundaries to be expanded, as we talked about last month, that had a hearing today. Actually, I haven't heard how that hearing went, but it had a hearing today in natural resource. There are a handful of bills that dealt with blackout periods for bonds if they didn't pass. The House Bill 2207 had a hearing on March the 24th. It's still pending. A couple other bills regarding supermajorities required for bond elections have been referred to the House Pension Investments and Financial Services Committee on March the 17th. Those have not yet been scheduled for a hearing. The bill regarding the use of public funds for lobbying that we talked about last month, that has passed the Senate. That was Senate Bill 19. It has been introduced in the House and referred to the House Committee on State Affairs on March 25th. There has not been a hearing scheduled for that bill yet.
And that one would prevent municipalities from using.
And special purpose districts.
Right.
Yeah,
Just create a blackout period of 90 days.
No. This is the bill regarding the districts or school districts or cities being able to hire lobbyists to advocate for state matters. Now, we talked about last month that doesn't impact federal lobbying. It just relates to lobbying on the state level. But for issues like what we're talking about here, if there was something of great importance to one of our MUDs, then you would not be able to avail yourself of lobby assistance to be able to go and support that legislation. So,
Private water companies would.
yes, private could, public could not. Let's see, House Bill 250, we talked about last month regarding limitations on maximum amount that could be used for debt service. That was referred to Ways and Means in February, has not moved. So a suite of bills that dealt with the 3.5% threshold versus the 8% threshold. A couple of those were referred, House Bill 763 referred to Ways and Means on March 5th. House Bill 1131 was referred to Ways and Means on 3/7. Neither one of those have been heard, and I think there was another one in here somewhere that also dealt with that. That was, let's see, House Bill 5502 was referred to Ways and Means on 4/7, and Senate Bill 3026 was referred to the Senate Local Government Committee on 4/7. Those two are particularly troublesome as well. I mean, a lot of these are troublesome, but in addition to repealing the distinction between developed and developing, would also require an election to increase the tax levy over the amount on the average tax bill from the previous year. So that's an additional restriction over and above the 3.5%. So those are particularly troubling. We have been working with the legislature to try and educate them on special districts and the impact there. So to be determined. There has not been a hearing on those bills as of yet. The bill regarding the total expenditure from all available sources that Representative Toth introduced, House Bill 3537, that has some very problematic language. That was referred to Intergovernmental Affairs on March the 24th. No hearing has been set yet for that bill. Betancourt's bill that would increase the homestead exemption for school districts from 100 to 140. That passed the Senate on February 13th, was sent to the House February 18th, is referred to Ways and Means in the House on March 25th. It is still pending and waiting for a hearing as well. The bill regarding the requirement to move funds from Text Pool and TextStar to the comptroller to manage, those are still pending in committee. They were referred to committee back in February, and nothing's happened there on those yet. Somebody brought up, may have been you, David, the Senator Perry legislation regarding the $1 billion fund that would be basically seed funded with sales tax. His bill, which was the Senate Joint Resolution 66, has not moved. It was sent to the Finance Committee on 310, but the companion legislation in the House Joint Resolution 7 by Representative Cody Harris, that was referred to the House Natural Resources Committee on March the 7th. It was voted out of committee on March 19th and has been sent to calendars at the beginning of April. So that's the one that's moving. I would anticipate that's the one that passes and then flips over to the Senate. Yep. There've been about 9,000 bills introduced this session, which I think they're on pace for 5 to 10% more bills introduced this session than last session. So it's hard to believe that they can introduce and try to process that much legislation in a 5-month period. But that's my fastest 2 minutes in the legislature. It's my Chris Berman attempt here.
Have you heard any rumors that the Democrats are going to flee the state to Delaware?
Yes.
Yeah, you do this long enough and still history starts to repeat itself.
Yeah.
It wasn't Delaware last time. Where was it?
Washington.
Washington.
Mine's in Delaware now.
Okay.
They're expected to flee after they pass the budget to Washington, DC.
The games people play. That's all I have. Happy to answer other questions if you have them.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brian, appreciate it. Brings us to agenda item 12, General Manager's Report. Mr. Peterson.
Main thing I wanted to just cover, I passed out the summary of the GRP meeting summary. I won't read all the details, but looks like this, and then there's a copy of a spreadsheet behind it. A couple of key points I just want to pull off of that. The GRP attorney did kind of go over the roles and responsibilities of the committee, since there was 2 new committee members. I then asked again for my agenda item to be placed on the next agenda, asking for the members to come prepared to talk about their goals on what they want to accomplish as they represent their specific contingents. We did the committee approved the GRP Division fiscal year 26 demand projections. And that's what that page, the attachment is, essentially holding the pumpage. I did ask if, when it was intended that the additional water that would go to mud 88, 89 and Scud, when that would be available, because that would then create some more pumpage. And the transmission line that they need to get the water to them is about an 18-month process. So that's why it wasn't in that particular approval. It will be considered next year when the line can actually move the water to them.
I thought that was a swap out. They let that private utility out to
Right.
allow them in. So does it net back to zero?
It's- Right, Mid-South,
That's it. That's it.
yeah, Mid-South, and they're not using theirs now, so it's swapping a portion of that out. I think they're taking, those muds would be taking about 500,000, I believe, of that 0.69.
You ever pick up why they're not using theirs? Are they in the third aquifer or?
No, they had a huge fire at their facility, and it damaged a lot of equipment. And so they can't, it's not worth it to them to rebuild that facility. So they were able to get out of that committee.
Vote it down. That's one way to get a contract.
Is that Wood Forest? Is that,
That's in the area. I mean, that's who serves where I live, which is that
do
region.
they have to pay the GRP fee? They still have to pay the surface water conversion fee, right?
I don't know that answer offhand, but I can.
That's all right. No,
I
it
can find out.
seems to be crazy.
Yeah, there was a lot of, I don't know. You know,
Yeah, they're still a
Chris could probably
contracted
answer that.
participant. So they have to pay the groundwater fee. They just don't pay the surface water fee because they don't receive surface water.
Yeah,
So-
so, but the real,
Yeah.
within 20 cents of each other.
They're still paying.
Yeah.
One of the things I wanted to run by the trustees is, as I requested that item, I think, and Brad and I continue to talk between GRP meetings with Kim and Brad. And something that we talked about, I thought was a really good idea, and I'd like to kind of run it by you. What is our goals? What are our goals? And so I want to make sure that as I present that to the committee, that is consistent with this board. So, because we've talked about it here and there in different times, there were some things brought up during campaigning, et cetera. So I just wanted to kind of go back over what I think our goals are and confirm that that's what they are. So first and foremost, I think that there's an overriding interest in trying to find ways to increase the utilization of the GRP facility itself. However that happens. Now, maybe harder than we think, but at least that's a goal. And I'd like to pursue that in some form or fashion. Obviously, ideally that leads to lower rates. So that would be goal number 2, is find ways to lower the overall GRP rate to the consumers. And then lastly, I don't think we can ignore the subsidence benefits that are at least tied to the greater use of surface water across the county. So at least to consider subsidence as a piece of our goals as we look at the first 2 goals. So those are kind of the 3 main talking points that I think that I was going to propose, but happy to hear either consensus or additional input.
Can I test the first one? If you say it that way, increase utilization, is it because we want to, extend the life of the aquifer? And then if we do, we get the second one, right? I mean, just increasing the use of GRP, if it does not reduce the overall cost, seems to be pretty limited. So I'm just wondering, do you put in another piece to that first one, which is if you're maximizing that in the whole region, you're kind of extending the life of your aquifer, and recognizing that there's development coming, and this is a way to kind of extend that life and continue development that's going to come here no matter what.
I think that's definitely the result of increased utilization for sure. I think that one of the getting kind of into the weeds on how we get there, the pricing structure right now, and with there being no mandate, and again, I don't want to use no mandate as an excuse. I think there's other ways that we can look to find new GRP members. And I know that the incentive before was there was a mandate, and now there's not. But there could be other ways of thinking outside the box that we could look at to find alternatives, to find or incentivize other users that are not current GRP members. Because the only real way that you're going to reduce the costs to the GRP members is find more members. And with no mandate, that's going to be difficult, perhaps. But the market, different costs, different alternatives to the growth. To your point, the market could start pricing. I mean, well costs are a lot more expensive than they used to be, and if there's a way to incentivize an individual or developer to look towards the GRP, perhaps that might, and there's some incentive to do that, then that might bring other folks to the table.
But the debt, the debt element of the GRP fee is like 55%. So if you have a facility that's half empty and you fill it up, like that debt is spread out, across more gallons. So obviously the price is going to come down. And I guess the question I have is, you look at MUD 88, 89. I mean, they fought for almost 2.5 years to join the GRP, and they would turn down, the first time, maybe the second time. So you have to begin to look at their economics. They're going to spend X, $10 million building the pipeline, and then the cost of the wells. So you have to begin looking at the cost structure of drilling wells and connections, and determine, what's the break-even point. And what I haven't seen, what I see when I go to the meetings is the lawyers stand up and say, we're not selling any more water to anybody. And I'd like to see, what is the break-even point of drilling a well and connecting these different cities, and what's that break-even point that we can begin selling more of the capacity that's sitting there idle, like in the GRP. And I've never, to me, you need a salesman or someone to go out and begin figuring out the deal that gets people to connect to the GRP, which is sitting there half empty.
Yeah, and I asked that question in my first meeting, and as far as is there any reluctance to selling more water, and the answer was no, no objection, other than there's pending litigation that could cause issues with that particular.
The attorney's quite adamant.
Yeah, I think
to say the least. One of these, you're not doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's opposition once that gets cleared up.
Yeah.
Hopefully that gets cleared up. And then at that point, I think we really start thinking outside the box to see what can be done.
Has anybody seen, I haven't, I know that the contract of 8889 has been signed, I believe, at least by GRP. So what's the water rate for selling to 8889? Do you know? Have you heard?
I don't have
No.
that information.
Same price as everybody.
Yeah, I don't know
Well,
why.
I don't know if that's true.
I can help
Is
with
it
that.
in Crystal?
It's the same price.
Same
Anybody
price?
who's,
Okay.
every participant has the same price for groundwater, the same price for surface water.
What was that private utility, what's it called, Metro? What's the one that had the fire? Mid-South.
Yeah.
Mid-South. Were they buying water 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Surface water?
Yes,
Yes.
yes. And so basically they're slipping into that slot. That's why there's no price increase.
That's the way the agreement
They're
says.
slipping in the slot.
Basically, what they decided is they could drill wells since there's unlimited well usage. We had a commitment to DFC and now it's unlimited. So they decided they had, probably several $1 million fire for their receiving facilities for their surface water. Those said, hell, we got no limit on our drilling now, so we're gonna just drill wells rather than replace the surface water receiving facility.
That brings up another point too, and I'll get back to the goals, just want to confirm with you all, but there was another lengthy discussion with Lone Star, who attended the meeting with their geologist. You can read about it here, but I do want to point out again that they did, in fact, re-acknowledge and confirm that they are planning a decline. It is a prescribed decline of the aquifer. So yeah, I think that's pretty interesting, but is everyone at least in alignment with those general goals? I mean, there's a lot of ways to get to skin it, and get to the goals. I don't want to get into all that. We'll have to build that and figure out, think outside the box, figure out how to get there. But and it may be after the legal stuff is over, perhaps. I don't know, but we'll get there.
Can you briefly just explain or expand a little bit on your third one about the subsidence for a newbie?
Well, there's a lot of, certainly there's been a lot of studies of subsidence, and it is directly correlated to groundwater withdrawal. That's not a secret. So the idea of subsidence is that the more you pump, the greater. And actually, there was an individual that you've heard here before, Dr. Meinrath and Laura Norton attended the meeting and talked about fault and talked about subsidence. And essentially what Dr. Meinrath has studied is that while there was a mandate a few years ago, not only were the aquifers essentially rebounding or starting to flatten and rebound, but also the rate of subsidence in this area was lessening. And since the DFC went back up, that rate is increasing again, like it was prior. So there is definitely a direct relationship between groundwater pumpage and subsidence. So the idea here would just be, obviously, as an organization, if we're looking to increase the utilization of the plant, or i.e. take more surface water or find other more surface water takers, then the theory would be that would be certainly helpful to subsidence withdrawals across the subsidence drops across the county.
I have a question, and mostly it'd be for Chris. I recall that water well pumping within the Woodlands well field reduced as we started to take the GRP water. That is correct. And that's when, like PAM 13, the subsidence unit near this wastewater plant 2.
PAM 13.
So it flattened out basically, and now it's starting to subside more. Subsequent to 2020. Is the Woodlands water field pumping more water?
It's still about 3 billion. So we have our permit through Lone Star, which is about 3 billion gallons of groundwater per year.
Yeah.
And we haven't broken it yet. Well, actually, our permit's about 3.6 in case of a drought, but we pump about 2.8 to 3 billion per year. We have not
And
increased.
that's less than what it was before the GRP water became available.
So it's been the seesaw, right? Because you started at 65%, or you started about 70%, then 65, then we went to 50, then 35%, then you went back to 50. So it's been a seesaw effect with that. So overall, 3 billion is about what you've been producing in groundwater since 2017, maybe 2018.
It was more than that before, right?
Yeah, more than that before.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to
Yeah.
get at. Was it double or?
Oh, so like in the drought of 2011, it was 8 billion. On average, it's 6 billion without any surface water. Because you do 50-50, right? So you're doing 3 million of 3 billion in ground, you can do 3 billion of surface.
I guess ultimately the question is then, is pumping unlimited, if you will, pumping outside of the woodlands, causing the acceleration of subsidence within the woodlands as measured by the,
Yes.
by pound, the pound.
Absolutely.
Pound 13.
I mean, there's a guy named Bill King who works with Bakers who I get an email from once in a while. So in the 23 to 24 period, Montgomery County's population went up 34,000. I mean, and if you go back a little further from 24 to 20 to 24, that 4-year period total, the population increase was 129,000. So all those people sucking on wells.
Yeah.
Basically.
All right, can I, and I appreciate Eric has really been transparent and open with what's going on in the GRP. I attended the meeting before last and then watched the video of last week or last meeting. Something that we've kind of skirted around, but I'd like to make sure you guys are aware of. So when Eric talks about the conservation district, Lone Star saying they're programming into their projections a drop of aquifers. They're finally readily saying that. They're saying as long as there's volume of water that's sufficient, that's all we care about. As long as the levels go down, we don't care about the levels going down. You extend that to the wells, and that's levels going down in the wells. And they're saying, well, if you have to re-drill wells or lower pumps, that's an infrastructure problem. You take it one step further, then you begin to bring in subsidence. Okay. So you could conclude that the Lone Star Conservation District is embracing a plan that is programmed into the community subsidence. And they're saying that's not their problem. And I think we as the Woodlands community need to think about how do we feel about that and what kind of response do we want to provide back to Lone Star? Okay. Because I think
You had a chance to vote me in 2018 and voted the local Tea Party chairman. Yeah, so.
we're not reading the history.
That's the answer.
I don't
want to change, then the next election.
You running again?
Get some candidates, right?
Well, I think it's more than that. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for education. And I think when the community says, hey, we're seeing subsidence because of water, they're not going to go to Lone Star. They're going to come here and say, you're the Woodlands Water Authority. What's happening with water and why is it impacting subsidence? And we go say, well, it's a county problem. We're not doing anything about it. I just want to test your interest in, is that something that this group has any appetite for to educate and have some ownership in?
Well, I think if we support the 3 points, the last of which was subsidence, then I think we're making a statement as a board. And I would be fully supportive, frankly. But there's, in addition to what you were saying, there's an increased cost. If you have to replace wells.
So, yeah.
But increasing wells compared to replacing houses
Well,
is probably a much more focused activity that can be managed.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah,
I probably didn't go into all the detail here in my write-up, but the documents that were passed out were actually created by the other new committeeman, Ben, and
on behalf of 8889 and Scott. He had done a lot of work for that over the years. So some of what was presented by Lone Star's geologist came from him. But there was some graphs in there that specifically showed the prescribed lowering or decline of the aquifer as it relates to their specific wells across the freeway, and where their pumping level is, and basically identified how much time they have left. So I asked the question of Lone Star, since you're the permitter of all these wells in Montgomery County, couldn't we build a model that shows where all the municipalities' wells, when they're gonna hit their dry part, when they're gonna run out of the ability to lower their pumps? Because you can rework to a certain point and lower your pump for so long. You can't re-drill the same well. The bottom is done.
Right.
And so I would like to know if there's a ticking time bomb at some point. When does that cross over with all the wells, in Montgomery County, and to the point of what's the break even point? And when's that going to happen? Is it 5 years from now? Is it 20 years? Is it 50 years?
I would like to see about 8889's calculation they made to make this decision.
They have Evangeline wells or Jasper.
I think they have both.
GRP.
They have both, and they're hitting gas in the Jasper, which isn't uncommon. It happens quite often.
There we go. Another question, because it seems that if I'm looking at this correctly, Eric asked LSGCD if they had the same information. I presume the information that was presented for
They
88.
do that well analysis.
Yeah.
All the permitted wells.
That says LSGCD responded that it'll be too large a task for staff. I mean, am I getting that right?
That's what the response was.
They have no staff.
Aren't they supposed to be a groundwater conservation district? Or am I missing the point here? Well, I think you probably realize, yeah, okay.
So one option we have is we have a Woodlands representative to that groundwater conservation
I
district.
know who he is.
Yes, he's John Wertz, okay? We potentially could,
We can bring him in.
No, but John Morton was, you gotta, let's.
Is it Ernest? Is it worse?
it's John.
Yeah.
That's not worse.
It's on the, I didn't know
Yeah, it's Jones.
I thought, well,
Was he appointed?
Yes.
we had all the controversy with John Yours died.
We ran on it.
Yeah.
No one filed against him,
Of course, he,
so he didn't have.
it's, until you get out of the politics, it's never gonna run.
We actually have two people. Ernest is awesome.
He's not he's not
Is
the,
he at large or?
he's District 3, something or other.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's-
Precinct three.
Precinct 3. I mean,
They both live in-
still technically over this area.
I mean, matter of fact, I think both of them live in 46 or 47. I forget. Ernest lives at 46, but John may live at 46 or 47. I forget which one.
But that was the thought is to talk to them about, what the Woodlands goals are. And bring some of this topic to their attention. But anyway.
Is anyone opposed to what is being proposed or have anything they'd like to add? If not, I think you have a consensus of this group. Anything else?
No.
Okay, that brings us to agenda item 13. Personnel Committee did not meet, so there's no report. Audit and Finance, Ron?
We met on April 2nd with SDRA, that's over the same thing that they presented tonight. No official result on that yet.
Very good. Okay, Public Education, Neil?
Yes, the PC met today. We looked at the results of the committee working group meeting on April 2nd. And it became clear that a key outcome is to provide more support for members so that they can disseminate accurate and consistent messaging. And won't go into the tools and ideas there, but the consultant Holloway is continuing to work on these items, and there's a plan in the next several weeks to bring those items to fruition. The next CWG meeting will be on May the 13th and will include a tour of the wastewater facility, treatment facility number 1. And that's in coordination with SJRA staff. So that's set to go. And that's my report. Thank you.
What date is that?
May 13th. It's a Tuesday, I believe. Let me check that. May 13th. Yes, it's a Tuesday.
Very good. Thank you. Counselor, do we need to recess to? We do not. Very good. That brings us to agenda item 16. We had 2 requests for placement items to be placed on future agendas, design parameters and peak flow graphs. Anything
Well,
else?
include the discussion of the April 1st, Paul Mudd meeting. In other words, so we can talk about their presentation. Because that's a lot of.
That'll be post
There'll be another
the
one.
May, that'll be post the May meeting.
I said the April 1st.
10 to 12.
As far as I'm concerned, we don't need to have that meeting because.
Which? The one on May?
The one on May 8th, because they presented a bunch of data that's no good.
Okay. Very good. We'll leave it at that. Anything else, Brad?
Yeah, so building on Kent's comment, I'm very concerned that Corelli's gonna bring a bunch of results on May 8th that some of us, many of us may have some questions about the input that's being used. And that will be their, basically their final MPV calculations will be presented then. And the results of the matrix analysis will be done then. So it seems like we ought to have an opportunity before May 8th to provide feedback and engage with them before they finalize their numbers. Because otherwise we're going to be discussing MVP numbers that some of us question about the input. Is there any interest in having a one-off trustee meeting before the 8th to discuss these things?
Here's one.
So does Eric have the questions to give?
Basically, I'd like to present the data that they're using false design data. And it's been going on and, it's obvious. Let me just stop a minute.
No, wait, no, please.
No, I want to show people that you can dig this
Why
up.
don't we do this in a meeting, or excuse me, a poll to say what Brad did, what do you use those, where you send around the surveys, what's a good day for you? Do you want to do this? We do something like that as opposed to try and hash it out now.
As far as the date or a special
Yeah,
trustee meeting?
yeah.
A special trustee meeting?
And, if there is enough interest and so forth, as opposed to laboring through it now.
So we only have 3 weeks left, right?
Mhm.
So.
But I mean, doing it at our next trustee meeting, which is the 14th, is too late.
Too late. So we have a
Well,
special.
That's well taken.
I agree with that.
If anybody gets a chance, this is the data that they should be looking at. We've got 2 of us that went through the 5th interim accounting, and this is April 2013. This is the result of the screwed up SFDU that they presented that they ultimately had to rescind. And this is what generated. This has got every land use, every plat of every mud, which is real handy. And it's got all the land use information. One thing I was trying to calculate it, but there's no breakdown of what tracks go to which plane. And anyway, I don't know whether you've got any of these left, but they're a huge source of data. And
They've been provided to everybody here.
these 2013,
The 6th and final.
no, but the 6th and final, does it have all of these same plats? Okay, has anybody gone in there and tried to find the 1.7 million gallon a day that's sold and not allocated? Has anybody done that? They haven't done it. They just, I have no idea where that, but the one thing that's not in these books, Eric, is there's no map of what geographic area goes to what plant. And then you can find out what acreage is left. See what I'm saying? In the Woodlands, they advertise that they've got 700 acres undeveloped in the whole Woodlands. Now, I don't know how much of that is left in the wastewater treatment plant one watershed that supplies that, but it's only a few hundred acres, and there's absolutely no way that the numbers that they're using are right. And it's critical that we get the right number because that's how they're justifying this new plant.
Why don't we have another trustee meeting on the 23rd? We can't have it next week, so the next opportunity would be the 23rd, next Wednesday, and we can discuss this more thoroughly.
The peak flow thing, if you notice, they ended up, and even though they said, even if we ran the plant, we got to put all this new equipment in to handle peak flow. And
they were evaluating the information that we gave them. So to say that they're giving false information.
No, I'm not saying.
They're just using the information that they were given.
But-
Okay, we
but
didn't ask them
I
to.
didn't say it was-
evaluate.
okay.
Driven by the SRA.
Yeah, I'm saying, but we didn't ask them to go evaluate the SFDUEs. If that's a good thing to do, then let's do that. But that's not what they were asked to do.
I
Okay, so let's
understand
just
that.
characterize it properly.
Okay, but the point
We
is,
say that they're doing something wrong.
well,
Okay.
they're using bad data.
Well, that's,
In your
we
opinion.
gave it to them.
No, we didn't.
No, we didn't.
SRA did.
But if you'll notice that they use this peak flow number, that one number to
We
justify.
can spend here for an hour.
No, but-
You're an optimist.
I know, Ken.
What's the appropriate time to have the discussion? Because it's not right now.
No, I understand.
I'd like to, my earlier suggestion was to take a poll through one of these survey things about trying to meet, as you said, is it gonna work for everybody? How is this gonna work? As opposed to trying
I'm
to.
flexible, so I can come to the 23rd. Anybody?
You people are still working, but.
Yeah, I'll have to look at the dates.
Look at the calendar. We can do that Google Doodle thing.
Yeah, do
We'll
it, something like that.
Why don't you pick a day here?
That's what the trustees want to do.
Yeah, pick a date.
Pick a date. 23rd's fine, whatever date you have, I'll be there.
We're talking, so I don't know, the 23rd, is that a weekday or?
That's a Wednesday. Wednesday,
2 weeks.
Talking
same time here.
daytime hours or?
No, 6 o'clock.
Okay.
This will be Peter, the trustee meeting 2 weeks out.
All right.
We can't do it next week. We have mud meetings.
I still have a day job.
And I don't know if the 23rd works, so that's.
Well, you're fine. Pick a day.
Any other further business?
No.
Thank you. Meeting adjourned.